following his eloquence.
We choose truth over facts.
Truth over facts. Joe Beijing Biden declared his
Build back better.
And build back better.
And building back better.
Build back better.
Building back better after disasters is also vital to prevent creating new risks. Together, we can build a safer world.
Build back better, as experienced Plagat using a phrase directly from the World Economic Forum, as an affirmation of the liberal world order.
To building and sustaining the liberal international world order.
That was after he openly spoke about the new world order.
There's going to be a new world order out there.
In the new world order.
A new world order.
Apparently, his writers want to calm resistance by selling us the Klaus Schwab Davos conquest of world ruling as a continuum of the world direction after World War II, with organizations that do today the opposite of the original purpose. But if an organization has with different goals has the same name, are these different goals really the same or is something different? For example, the Miele concern originally produced bicycles. Is therefore a Miele washing machine a bicycle because it has still the brand name Miele? Sure, if you can ride your washing machine through the streets, then post-World War II institutions are still the liberal world order, made to reduce the possibility of a repetition of Nazi Germany in which a German chancellor rules Europe. And that's like polluting much more toxic. The plant with fluoride gas, millions of liters of water contaminated with borax to spill up the ore from which the sulfuric acid solves the lithium, and all this using a machinery driven by electric energy gained by coal burning in energy plants in China to produce batteries for electric cars, which will save the planet. And therefore seeking to burn diesel outside from China is evil. Which is the idea of to fight climate change. All scientists agree to the Paris Climate Accord reinforced by YouTube and must therefore be true because of the famous meta study done by the cartoonist Cook, and cartoonist is scientific subject, and they confirm the consensus in this cartoon. While Trump's just pollute overall less by using current technique more efficient is evil. Proof instead of Petrodantica sinking into the ocean while delivering the oil from the US Federal Reserve to China, producing oil in the States itself, and even capturing collateral gas emissions and selling that gas, which will reduce carbon emissions in the States by 4% without borax in the groundwater, wherever the sulfuric acid goes, and no fluoride gases that opened a new hole over China in the ozone layer after we achieved to close the ozone hole over Arctica by banning hydrochlorofluorocarbons. That's a bad idea. And I make it more easier. It means orange bad with a scientific explanation because. For example, some might think that stuff like don't experiment on humans, neither for fun nor profit, which was the Nuremberg Code, and a standard in the WHO, until a member of the Ethiopian Communist Party, and took really surprisingly subventioned by the Chinese Communist Party, the Ethiopian Communist Party, became the WHO president. And to please the communists, occupied China. Taiwan shouldn't exist, neither the warnings about an illness arriving from China in November 2019. Don't use health as political leverage, just erase a country. And the secret was erase criticizing Marxism is unhealthy racism. Bigots like me thought Homo sapiens is a race besides Homo erectus or Australopithecus, and a phenotype of Homo sapiens are East Asian people. But that's like, it's like criticizing Islamic scripture and belief, which is also racist. An example, when Iran executes Sunni Muslims citing Sahih Bukhari Hadith 6922, or Saudi Arabia executes Shia Muslims citing the same Hadith, if you criticize that Sahih Bukhari Hadith 6922 text, which is in Sahih Islamic Hadith from the Holy Prophet Muhammad, because you oppose killing Muslims, that's racist, Islamophobe, Muslimophile. Supporting killing Muslims is tolerance to Arab Muslim leaders who have petrobanks that are paying members of the Klaus Schwab World Economic Forum. And as Klaus Schwab, found in Noah Hariri a fusion reincarnation of Goebbels and Mengele with ideas totally the opposite of Torah, Mishnah, and therefore Judaism, mentioning the conspiracy theory that a pharmaceutical product has side effects which are plentiful documented in front of your lying eyes in documented truckloads of corpses after forcing most rapid and successfully and repeatedly the wonderful moderator of symptoms by Pfizer on the Israeli population. I mean, Pfizer is a stand-up company since it invented Viagra, and it also produced cancerous baby powder. Well, that's anti-Semitic then for your lying eyes not to use it on Jews. Words like myocarditis, internal exsanguination due to lacerated fasciae, Creutzfeldt-Jakob syndrome after the liver transplant, something that did some people from a single into a double string to something because somehow that and sweet that it happens in the liver and goes no. Graphene oxide flirting with the glutathione shredding the immune system or pulmonary hypertension are only words. And therefore, the World Health Organization is warning us from anti-Chinese racism by criticizing Marxist bureaucracy, which is very healthy because the most sane best for your mental health is bureaucracy. They have arguments like antiparallel mask filtering particles as small as 20,000 nanometers are a shocking obstacle to a royal health particle of 120 nanometers in diameter. Imagine the compliance.
Biological chip that it is in the tablet, and once you take the tablet and dissolves into your stomach, sends a signal that you took the tablet. So imagine the applications of that, compliance.
120 nanometers, it never fit through 20,000 nanometer opening. From the League of Nations, which had then become the United Nations, came a document called the Universal Human Rights Declaration in 1948. With stuff like a man and a woman of all colors and shapes and ages of Homo sapiens have equally the right to choose their marriage partner. And who knows what a woman... I know what a woman is. A woman has a penis and swims fast in China to win medals. Or say the opinion only under the risk to be confronted with a better argument when we now know that the better argument is hate speech if Twitter bots got instructed by the government to pledge for the worst argument, which is like inflation is good for the economy. And when the former Nazi SS officer Kurt Waldheim became Secretary General of the United Nations, finally the emissaries of dictatorships, which is the governed form of many countries, the majority of countries, got the obligation to seek every year about a human rights report about human rights violations in Israel. No matter what happens, deliver a human rights complaints on Israel, which is very efficient and pragmatic because you don't have to look into all countries or dictatorships or compare or read the 30 human rights articles with the policy happening, compare that then with how policy happening in each corner of the world. First you condemn Israel and then you choose which article has to be considered being violated and then fit the story to that. And it will be pleasing to the majority of countries in the UN which are dictatorships, and which enables, for example, nice people like Assad to frown upon the Jews instead of getting criticized themselves. Suddenly, this came up when the ex-Nazi Waldheim became Secretary General in an organization which that originally was driven to avoid the repetition of World War II and the Holocaust on Jews, which then also never happened except in Rwanda, Cambodia, East Turkmenistan, which are called the Uyghur Armenian civilians or Christians in Nigeria, Pakistan, or the gracious Taliban and all the other nice folks. It only seems that in this specific item, the UN has the role to distract from, as Biden said it, local culture.
I'm not going to speak out against what he's doing by making it forceful. I said, and by the way, he said he gets it. Culturally, there are different norms at each country.
And local culture means exterminating people. The name is still the UN, and this is the liberal world order. Since China were tolerant, communism with the world proletariat revolution initiated thanks to Lenin's essay What Now by the smarter communist establishment like Klaus Schwab, and they organized spontaneous revolutions. That idea is Marxism and was the communism in the whole Eastern Europe, with tolerant slave camps, first against ruthless cosmopolitans, which was called for Jews, and then everyone who disturbed the consensus by having an other opinion, which is hate speech today. No, it's not hate speech, it's disinformation or something. When in a military pact called Warsaw Pact, led by the Soviet Union, offered to force the West into happiness militarily, those declining their happiness, or gulags, had their North Atlantic Pact to defend countries in which were celebrating things like freedom or the Universal Human Rights Declaration of 1948. And later even other countries next to the Soviet Union, like Pakistan, which does now military joint ventures with China, but is in the NATO, and does it also military operation with Russia, Iran, and in France we weren't supposed to know what BRIC means. Still, there are competing government ideologies existing today that want to use arms to conquer people that like something like universal human rights. But the Soviet Union doesn't exist for now 30 years. But why going to the principle of protecting countries that have human rights, which came thanks to Pfizer profit out of fashion? Pandemic of the unvaccinated and human rights are sick. That would mean the reorientation of NATO while maintaining human rights, and human rights are something that is in the way of someone calling capitalism everything is mine.
I think we're going to have to think about a recalibration of a whole range of human rights.
Better we announce over Biden to tolerate a minor incursion and make a minister rich that happens to belong to BlackRock. Also, when we close the pipeline, we have to open another pipeline there that he can, which is called Nord Stream. Otherwise, he can't fill up the tanks before going to the Ukraine. And the BlackRock minister also, BlackRock also owns weapon manufacturers like Lockheed which. And BlackRock itself is heavily invested in China, but it is the major force in the World Economic Forum, which is the opposite of the BRIC. And BRIC is from China, where the investment is of the strongest arm of the shut up. It must be good. Can't we convince people selling boosters in the spring? Let's earn in weapons a little more in Europe, and when the war's over in the winter, we are already preparing the new vaccines. So now we can earn over BlackRock China investment and NATO as Ukraine helper buying weapons. While Russian petro banks get only blocked until the Iran deal was enabled, and $10 billion go to Russia to build somewhat in the future nuclear plants in Iran, and block without replacement fossil fuels until only the richest can afford it. And until then, the ruble is stable again, and Russia is selling their fuel to the BRIC countries. Also, our outsourced oil producers can earn much more while producing less. And besides borax besides they produce also borax in the groundwater, and it's better for the world. And make an embargo against Russia, so they don't get things that they have themselves. And if you put borax in the groundwater, you also have less of the poor people, which are not humans because they don't have money. Let's do that thing from Sri Lanka, aka the Netherlands beta test. You know, that thing with banning nitrate fertilizers in Europe, offering plant centralized cultures like food hubs for our plant markets. Sri Lanka already had some farmers since that, and let's call the Netherlands and Germans farmers in this climate change the neo-kulaks. That does sound as if NATO is defending the well-being of the member countries' population, of course, because human beings are the people that are rich, and who isn't rich is simply starved to death vermin, like Hitler did to Greece, starting to Ukraine, and Mao to the Chinese overpopulation. He just forced people to being pregnant, and then they had overpopulation, but then he forced to kill everyone, again overpopulation, because if you make a population control, you have higher density or population asymmetry with too many old people, but in that case, suddenly comes along an illness that kills all people. And it has still the name NATO, and therefore it must be still the liberal world order. Churchill announced he wants a kind of United States for Europe as countries bound to the common grounds in cultural identity.
In a sign of hope amid a mass of war talk, Winston Churchill says,
"It is not a movement of parties, but a movement of people. It must be all for all. Europe can only be united by the heartfelt wish and vehement expression of the great majority of all the peoples, in all the parties, in all the freedom-loving countries, no matter where they dwell or how they vote. We cannot aim at anything less than the union of Europe as a whole.
And then you just have to tell people that having kids is evil, especially from white people. Replace the empty space with forced resettlement from the areas that should anyway be imperialistic colonies. Only the richest are human beings, and the other that now import are exchangeable assets that can starve together with the Netherlands non-humans because they don't have money. And by the way, the EU Treaty, Article 4, with the cultural identity of each nation and region, you know what is the basis of the founding of the European Union, abolished 2007 because the French people said yes to it. And it's still called European Union, like Union of the Nations in Europe, and it's still the liberal world order. It's a little bit like Hitler, who simply octroyed the Germanness, replacing the cultural diversity like the nation of Prussia, Saxon, Bavaria, or how all the 16 states had been called. It's like Stalin's essay from 1913. Pick some habits from each area and let's have a Soviet identity, which will be the Russianness of Uzbekistan and the Russianness of Lithuania. It only didn't work for them because they were not so smart like Klaus Schwab. And this starts with the name. Not the National Woke Revolution, Deutsches Volk erwache, woke, erwache, and also not by the international organized spontaneous revolution of workers that calculated always people, even non-humans, those that do not have money, the deplorables. And no, we call it now the fourth industrial revolution. Only robots make the work. Robots are poor people in the work camps. See, no person is mentioned where to set to aristocracy for another 1,000-year empire. Reich means empire. Only we are so smart in the World Economic Forum because we create a clone of our thinking as a computer program and get ourselves killed, and the program will think it is us. Which it totally is, as you die while the program starts, even if all your perception is due to nerve impulses 2 milliseconds later perceived, or maybe we die those microseconds before or after, or however it's continuous, just 2 milliseconds too early or too late. And you yourself get frozen as a mobile backup, watching from a little nitrogen-filled canister, the good thing. The computer is you. Just remember that when you think about that and you are frozen in that canister. Because there are no consequences for you, there are no errors. Any opinion mentioning an error got censored, so everything is right now. It's like the tree that falls in the forest, but nobody heard it. So does this tree exist and did he fall? Or like your grandma fell from the stairs and broke her hips and bled out eternally, but it was in the free day of the nurse and nobody was there to witness. So she's probably alive. As you see, everything has the same name as in the liberal world order, or like, for example, free market, in which all participants are free. Even the forced labor slaves in Xinjiang are free participants, competing to balance the price of workforce into zero. Just by calling it free market, it's capitalism, and if you don't like that because capitalism is evil, that justifies Marxism, in which everyone is socialized in harmonic consensus as those not in consensus are enslaved. And the robots of the fourth industrial revolution. See?